Is Magic the Gatherings multiverse different than Marvel's multiverse? Are they necessarily the same? I'll ask Stephen Hawking when I'm dead, and in the meantime build the titular creation from this trash of time and space. Spectacular Spider-Man. There are 12 printings, but I like the Spider Armor MK1 suit the best for the upcoming build. It's only $570. No big deal. And on the topic of money, I usually build on a budget. Spectacular Spider-Man, however, is not the humble cage wrestling king of Spider-Man. He's got all the fixings, and so will this deck. Spider-Man appears out of nowhere to save the day, so he's got Flash. With just a little bit of work, he can soar through skyscrapers, so for just 1 mana, he's got Flying. And his legacy of sacrifice is manifest for a single mana. He dies, but hexproof and indestructible is granted to all the other creatures you control. There are plenty of flavor wins and fails in this set. Looking at you, 7 mana Dr. Octopus, but Spectacular Spider-Man is so clean and so pure that it's certainly my favorite flavor win. Also, the creature is a 3/2 for 1 and a white. This here deck will be an equipment deck, at least primarily, with a Flash sub-theme, and of course some Spider-Man flavor. Because of those deviations from the core plan, the high power level of most of the cards, and the game changers, I place this firmly in bracket 3. Let's get into the build, starting with the Spider-Man flavor, and let's all say the line together. With great power, there must also come great responsibility. This is the only creature aura in this equipment deck, but it needed to be included because of course. For 3 and a white, it supercharges the enchanted creature by adding 2 power and toughness for each aura and equipment attached to it. But all damage that would be dealt to you is dealt to the enchanted creature instead. I say we strap Indestructible on that body and profit. We'll get to that later. Friendly Neighborhood inspired the name of this deck, and I just love how it enchants a land, making that land specifically the Friendly Neighborhood. It comes down and makes 3 1/1 human citizens, and grants the enchanted land a 1 mana tap ability. Target creature gets +1/+1 until the end of the turn for each creature you control, and it can only be activated as a sorcery. The deck is not overflowing with creatures, but there are 16 as well as these 3 fine citizens. I think we can all agree that Spider-Man is nothing without his web shooters. I'm not impressed by the small stat boost, but I am fully behind tapping a creature upon attack. Get webbed, sucker! The last flavor addition is Spectacular Tactics, a flexible 2 mana instant that gives a counter and hexproof to a creature, or destroys a creature with 4 power or greater. Spectacular Spider-Man has Spectacular Tactics, and that's all I gotta say about that. So before getting into the main strategy, there was this other deviation, the Flash angle, on account of MK Spidey having Flash, and because I really like Philia Exuberant Shepherd in either printing. This doggo blinks a non-land permanent when she attacks, paving the way for your attackers to deal direct combat damage, permanently removing a token, or to get extra value from targeting something that you control. She gets a counter, but you could also reanimate another creature with pre-war formal wear, reset the burden counters on the 1 ring if things are looking dicey, tutor another equipment with Cloud Midgar Mercenary, and so much more. For the record, these 3 permanents can be found in this deck. Also for the record is that this deck list is right below this video in the description. While you're down there, take the 2 seconds to subscribe to the channel for deck techs like this, pre-con upgrades, and whatever else I'm feeling, as it relates to the bracket 2 and 3 commander format. It helps out the channel a bunch, and I truly appreciate it. But not as much as you'll appreciate the Selfless Squire when facing down a monstrous Alpha Strike from Gulta and his dino buddies. Look at these goons trying to take me out. The creature comes down and prevents all that damage, turning it into +1/+1 counters that go on the Squire. The defense this affords you after swinging with your fat commander is very needed, but with the equipment in this deck, like Brotherhood Regalia and Silver Shroud Costume, the Squire can turn around the very next turn to finish off the player that gave it all those counters. Solitude is the last piece of flash tech that isn't exactly on theme, but I'd argue that it's close. You can evoke this to remove a problematic creature if you need to, but paying full price can go a long way with the combination of all the equipment and Solitude's lifelink. Sigarda's Aid, Forge Anew, and Mithril Coat are the flash gear that are fully on theme. Sigarda's Aid is a truly outrageous card for a single white mana, giving all of your equipment spells flash and letting you attach them for free when they enter. That level of power makes me sick, unless it's on my side of the battlefield. Forge Anew lets you equip at instant speed and pay 0 for the first equip you activate on each of your turns. It's also a recursion piece that brings back an equipment card from the graveyard to the battlefield when it enters. That's a Felia target. And finally, Mithril Coat is indestructible, grants indestructible, and equips freely sometimes. If it can save a hobbit from a troll, it's good enough for Spider-Man. Now, most of the remaining instant speed gameplay comes down to the efficient white removal spells you'd expect to see. Swords to Plowshares, Path to Exile, Generous Gift, Disenchant, Heliod's Intervention, and Dispatch. Dispatch standing out with that Metalcraft synergy. So we talked about how great power comes with great responsibility, and the Mithril Coat gave you a taste of what responsibility looks like in a card game. Spectacular Spider-Man has no innate defense, despite the MK suit being bulletproof, so we need to prepare for those villainous villains trying to take him down. Dawn Charm, Sajiri Shelter, and Teferi's Protection are the instants. The former doing 3 very cool things, the middle having a land on the backside, and the latter being busted. Now let's get metal. I already mentioned Silver Shroud Costume, Brotherhood Regalia, and Mithril Coat as protection, but there is also Darksteel Plate, Hammer of Nizan, and Caduceus, Staff of Hermes, that explicitly offer indestructibility. Sometimes. At least in the case of the life-linking Caduceus, that needs you to have 30 or more life to gain that keyword and +5/+5. That's not a high bar to clear in a format where you start with 40 life, but it can draw a big target smack dab on the middle of your face. On the note of equipment that both protect and attack, here is Commander's Plate, Swiftfoot Boots, Thran Power Suit, Plate Armor, and Sword of the Realms. And yes, I do think it's required to have the Iron Man Commander's Plate in this build. This card gets better and better as your commander has fewer colors, offering protection from each color that's not in your commander's color identity and +3/+3. I like Swiftfoot Boots more than Lightning Greaves because I'm bad at magic sometimes. The Shroud on Lightning Greaves stops you from attaching equipment onto the shrouded creature, and I've left my creature stranded from any more gear more times than I'd like to admit. Thran Power Suit turns up as you get your game plan together. Plate Armor is much the same, costing as little as 0 to equip for the +3/+3 and Ward 1. And then Sword of the Realms, otherwise known as Helvar, God of Battle, lets you get out of paying the commander cost by returning your dead spider to your hand. Or Helvar can give Spidey Double Strike and equip things for free. Who knew being responsible could be so fun? It's not an equipment, but I have to call out Codsworth Handy Helper that gives your commanders Ward 2, gives you 2 white mana to cast your equipment, and gives you free attachments. And let's talk about where those free attachments will come in very handy, starting with Colossus Hammer. In the deck list, I've tagged these cards as Thwip. And this is my favorite because of how this interacts with Spectacular Spider-Man. You can equip it to gain the ginormous 10 power and toughness boost that comes with the cost of losing flying. But Spidey doesn't care about that. The rules state that if you regain flying, like with Spidey's 1 mana activatable ability, you're free to take over the skyline once again. Also, the imagery tickles me. Machinist Arsenal and a tier end Prewin, on the other hand, have nothing about about them that tickles. Job select on Arsenal makes for a quality second threat, but introduces lethal commander damage as it gains the stats based on the total number of artifacts you control instead of just equipment. A tier and pre-win has a large upfront cost, but matches the attached creature's base power and toughness with your life total. That starting life total of 40 is coming in clutch once again. Loxodon Warhammer, Godsend, and Adaptive Omnitool are further tools in your kit that lay the beat down. Now I want to stay on equipment, but transition to one of my preferred ways to start a game. Getting Spider-Man out on turn 2 with a 3 total mana cast and equip follow-up. Here are Basilisk Collar, Onaginata, and Shadow Spear. Onaginata is the least familiar and my favorite, because I'm a hipster like that. Doesn't he kinda look like that weird little dude in 300? Yeah, you see it. Anyway, this can only be attached to a creature with power 3 or greater, but provides a 3-point power boost and trample. And I don't know how much crossover there is between Magic fans and folks that watched The League a decade ago, but this song everyone's afraid of my is about this weapon. You're not required to play the entire song after you cast it, but I am throwing it out there as an option. That's all the equipment that I want to talk about, which leaves the veggies of ramp, card advantage, and lands. The ramp in this deck is split between rocks and what I view as rituals. Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Pearl Medallion, boring, the Iron Crag, which is less boring because it can turn into equipment, and that's all the mana rocks. Though I suppose Sword of the Animist counts because it's an artifact, why not? Also Sword of the Animist. Sigarda's Aid, which I talked about earlier, still a gross card, I view more as a ritual. It doesn't give you a burst of mana in the same way Dark Ritual does, but pays for a burst of mana nonetheless. Codsworth, Forge Anew, and Hammer of Nizan fit this mold, as do Pure Steel Paladin and Arden Intrepid Archaeologist. The Paladin brings back the Metalcraft mechanic to turn all equip costs to 0, while drawing you cards as equipment enter the battlefield. Arden lets you choose what you want to equip at the beginning of combat, and lets you do it for free. Lastly in ramp is Battlefield Improvision. I think people are sleeping on this card on account of it having been released in Assassin's Creed, but it is mighty powerful. That's right, a 2-mana +2/+2 pump spell, and the ability to freely attach any and all equipment you control to a target attacking creature. May your opponents not block at their own peril. For card draw, there are a couple of flavor picks, being Cut a Deal and Secret Rendezvous. Despite his lethal commander antics, it's still your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, you know? I talked about the One Ring and Pure Steel Paladin, these are great. So too are Esper Sentinel, Archivist of Agama, and Shram Senior Edificer. Esper Sentinel is kind of funny, because if you equip it with that Colossus Hammer, it'd be impossible to pay the tax. The Archivist is part of the add good white cards to the deck plan, while Shram is part of the equipment plan. Mask of Memory, the Final Fantasy version, lets you see more cards, and so does Armored Sky Hunter. It lets you dig for equipment when it attacks, and then attach that equipment to a creature. Ideally, this is putting a tier and pre-win on Spectacular Spider-Man, but as a flyer, it's a quality alternative to punish your opponent's life totals. I forgot before to say that there are tutors in the deck, a bunch of them. Enlightened Tutor, Steel Shaper's Gift, Cloud Midgar Mercenary, Open the Armory, Stoneforge Mystic, and Inventor's Fair. I'm not a fan of tutors myself because I enjoy that deck building restriction, but I wanted to elevate the power and consistency of the deck, which is exactly the purpose of tutors. And with Inventor's Fair, you can see that lands are a real part of the equation. War Room and Monumental Henge can draw you cards. Command Beacon will save you from the dreaded commander tax. Ishgard, the Holy See, and Buried Ruin will bring key pieces out of the graveyard. Rogue's Passage wins games with that unblockable, and Daiganjo, Seat of the Empire, will flip an unexpected creature. The word on the street is that the Spider-Man set has been getting a bad rap, and I totally get that. Like, it's really weird seeing Venom as a doo-doo common. But there are plenty of cool design and amazing flavor pockets, so do me a favor and keep your eyes open for those opportunities. While I get some of those together myself, check out this blast from the ancient past of 2024, where I highlight 15 fantastic cards not seeing as much play as they should.